Ladies and gentlemen, wow, Xbox is flipping the script big time here. And during the wee hours of the night, just last night, Phil Spencer put out a tweet that pretty much broke the gaming web with a partnership that I don't think anyone expected until at least after the Activision deal was done. But Xbox has taken off their good guy act and going real hard at PlayStation here, as you'll see across a series of statements from both Microsoft and even Valve. It's everyone versus PlayStation, at least optically speaking, and Xbox knows it, and that's why they're making these moves. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here, you're into Xbox news and information, consider subscribing, and we'll get to all that in just one moment. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Broken Anvil and their new campaign, Forged, live right now on Kickstarter. Forged is a massive campaign full of high-quality, low-cost tabletop miniatures and original 5e compatible content for gamers and hobbyists everywhere. Forged includes beautifully sculpted 28mm heroic scale pre-assembled plastic miniatures as well as 5e compatible content, and there are some truly fantastic goodies waiting to be unlocked. You can choose the Heroes box, which features an exciting array of brave and daring characters, or you can choose the Encounters box with its squad of formidable enemies and impressive foes. Backers also have the option to get those heroes and enemy squads with the Adventure box. And for all you do-it-yourself folks out there, Forged also offers an Adventure STL bundle, so you can 3D print these models at home. But if you want the very best value this campaign has to offer, then pledging for the Forge Masters bundle will get you all the minis in the Adventure box, plus the 5e Adventure module, plus the Creature Compendium, plus the 7-piece Dragon bundle, plus the 45-piece Terrain bundle. It's a whole lot. And you'll be able to get even more as this campaign grows and unlocks more and more minis. By supporting this campaign, you'll get an incredible deal on a ton of Broken Anvil's creations before they hit retail, and you'll be able to help the BAM team achieve their dream of making these minis a reality. The campaign is live right now on Kickstarter. You can see it for yourself by checking out the links in the description below. With that, let's get into what was the tweet that shook the web up pretty hardcore, and it was happening while I was playing the Callisto Protocol, just trying to cope with the fact that I'm not enjoying that game as much as I'd like to, but I digress. Phil writes, Microsoft has entered into a 10-year commitment to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo following the merger of Microsoft and Activision Blizzard King. Microsoft is committed to helping bring more games to more people, however they choose to play. This is a really important final sentence here, given that we know Xbox wants to bring Game Pass to other systems, and I've always said that, alongside many of you, Switch will probably be the first one, and I think this is a step in that direction with that partnership. But let's stay on topic here. Call of Duty to Nintendo is a very big deal. This has not happened in a long while. Now, for those of you wondering how this is going to squeeze on this hardware, Phil Spencer would know better than anybody what hardware is coming up, and it's assumed wide and large that Nintendo is going to have some type of new Switch to come out that'll be more powerful to run Call of Duty. But otherwise, what we've seen in the past is based off the hardware like the DS or the Wii, they will have a team specifically working on Nintendo hardware to translate the experience from consoles to whatever Nintendo system it is. And typically it's wildly different than what is out on your PlayStation or your Xbox. We'll see if that's the case here because, again, we don't know how strong a potential Switch Pro would be. But I imagine that's a big factor in this deal since this would likely begin in 2023 when the deal presumably closes. However, this really to me isn't the juiciest part. While I'm excited about the idea of an Xbox Nintendo partnership and what that brings, and we'll talk about that a little bit more because we've seen it with bringing Ori to Switch, and we've seen the conversations behind the scene with Phil Spencer's emails. It's really between Xbox and Valve that I'm more keen on getting into. For those who don't know, Valve is right in the backyard of Xbox's headquarters, so they have a close relationship, and it's about the show right here as we go through these series of tweets. So Phil writes after the Nintendo tweet, I'm also pleased to confirm that Microsoft has committed to continue to offer Call of Duty on Steam simultaneously to Xbox after we have closed the merger with Activision Blizzard King. So what they're doing here is isolating platforms that are not PlayStation, that don't have Call of Duty, and saying, look what's going to happen when Activision joins us. This is better for gamers. You can no longer argue based off the commitments that we're making that we are making gaming a worse place when people are accessing games they originally couldn't, and one of them is the biggest game on the planet. Whether you like it or hate it, that is the truth. Now, the reason the Valve partnership here is interesting is you'll notice there isn't a year attached to this, but more importantly to me is it's a simultaneous release. It's not coming to Xbox and then the Microsoft Store and later on Steam. It's going to be day one on Xbox, day one on Steam. But again, make note that there is no single year attached to this. Be important in a couple of moments here, but let's go through some other tweets that I found fascinating. Let's go to Brad Smith, who is vice chair and president of Microsoft, who quotes Phil's tweet and says, "Our acquisition will bring Call of Duty to more gamers and more platforms than ever before. That's good for competition and good for consumers." I'm just laughing, not in a fanboy way. I'm laughing because of how they are taking the good guy act off. They are being very direct now. "Thank you, Nintendo. And any day Sony wants to sit down and talk, we'll be happy to hammer out a 10-year deal for PlayStation as well." Now, this isn't the first time the 10-year deal with PlayStation has been public. This happened previously with Bloomberg, where they put a statement out there, they being Microsoft, claiming, yeah, we submitted the 10-year deal. But to go out on Twitter makes it a little more casual, a little more common knowledge. It's definitely out there in the public eye, way more than a paywalled Bloomberg article. Now, here's where Phil starts to play a little bit dirty, because what Brad said was more like a, hey, whenever you're willing, we're here and we're ready. Whereas Dina Bass, who's a part of Bloomberg, tweets from her article when talking to Phil Spencer about this. See, this was a planned marketing push. She writes, "Microsoft's offered a similar deal to Sony, but they haven't accepted. Phil Spencer isn't mincing words about that. Quote, from where we sit, it's clear they're spending more time with the regulators than they are with us to try and get this deal done," end quote, he said in an interview. This is interesting. And before we get into Valve's comments, which I do think are a bit of a nail in the coffin optically speaking, I don't know what it'll do to regulators. This is monumental because what Xbox is doing here is trying to isolate PlayStation. As we know and have seen, the only other major company that has had some subtle level of pushback on the Microsoft Activision deal, and they don't have much of a leg to stand on because they're not a major competitor in the gaming space, is Google. PlayStation does have a bit of a leg to stand on in this regard, as we know, because PlayStation has a more vested interest in Call of Duty coming to their platform. And as a company that's seen the dollars and cents that arrive thanks to that game, where they take their 30% cut as a platform holder and watch as the game passes $1 billion in revenue, yeah, they want a piece of that pie and they definitely don't want to lose more of their cut. But what Xbox is doing here by supporting all these platforms is, again, as I said earlier, saying to regulators, look, when Activision was independent and they did not have any obligation to platform holders, these games were not on these systems or looked to be supported on these systems, let alone now we're going to go ahead and do that when they're a part of us. And I think that is saying something. How can gaming be worse if we're bringing this to more players? And again, the Game Pass deal comes into effect. How is gaming going to be worse if we're going to offer more value on our platform? You can still buy it on PlayStation, but we have Game Pass. You can still buy it on Steam, but Game Pass is on PC. Xbox is giving this the Minecraft treatment. The only difference on why this is more important perhaps is maybe Call of Duty is just widely played even more. But I really want to get into Gabe Newell's comments here because I think they are an absolute stunner. Here's what Gabe said to Kotaku. "We're happy that Microsoft wants to continue using Steam to reach customers with Call of Duty when their Activision acquisition closes. Microsoft has been on Steam for a long time, and we take that as a signal that they are happy with gamers' reception to that and the work we are doing. Our job is to keep building valuable features for not only Microsoft, but all Steam customers and partners. Microsoft offered and even sent us a draft agreement for a long-term Call of Duty commitment, but it wasn't necessary for us because A, we're not believers in requiring any partner to have an agreement that locks them to shipping games on Steam into the distant future. B, Phil and the games team at Microsoft have always followed through on what they told us they would do, so we trust their intentions. That's a big one. And C, we think Microsoft has all the motivation they need to be on the platforms and devices where Call of Duty customers want to be." Keep in mind, this is coming from Gabe Newell, who runs Valve, one of the most rich companies in gaming, one of the most profitable companies in gaming. They have no vested interest really in seeing Microsoft get Activision, other than knowing, yeah, Call of Duty will be here. But as they say in point A, we're not believers in locking them into that, so we're not going to sign the agreement. And even they are backing Xbox on this. This is a huge public black eye to PlayStation, and I imagine that they are very pissed off about this because it now looks like everyone is teaming up on PlayStation. This was a calculated effort. And it's funny because in yesterday's Starfield video, this is what I was talking about. I'm going to keep patting myself on the back when I got the opportunity to, because I know many people aren't quick to do it. But when I said something's coming and it's going to be something that sweeps the $70 conversation under the rug, it was going to be a game announcement, a reveal, or some big piece of news. And this immediately washes away any conversation on $70 and puts Microsoft in the limelight once more as the good guy, even though they're kind of taking the good guy act out of it all. They're becoming the aggressors a little bit more here. And that says something. I think this says to me, they want this deal done ahead of June. They do not want to wait the maximum amount of time. It also shows that they have been willing to make concessions ahead of anything the FTC is going to ask of them. And certainly those concessions were going to revolve around Call of Duty. And what's now happening with PlayStation is something I've talked about a lot on Defining Duke, is when you isolate them like this, and when you had the 10-year deal on the table, and when they didn't accept it, the regulators are going to maybe look at that and go, well, what are you doing? Now they don't really have to give you anything at all. They could just wall this off if they really wanted to, because you're just choosing to not accept, you're not complying. And I think that does say something about where we're heading, because PlayStation now continues to isolate themselves, funny enough, as the market leader. They very much want to be, I'd say, Nintendo-like in their behavior, where they don't show up at, for example, the big shows anymore. They just kind of talk about games when they want to, and they make a big deal out of it, and that's all there is to it, right? Just similar to the Nintendo Direct. Nintendo's silent, then a Direct pops off, and everyone's talking about it. You know PlayStation wants to carry themselves much like Nintendo, because if you do, you play by your own rule book. But they're not ready to get there quite yet. They don't have the framework up to sustain that quite yet with that live service future. And so that's why they're kicking and squirming to make sure they hold on to that Call of Duty money. But they very much risk losing a lot here, because now everyone's accepting deals except them. And the reason I think that Microsoft wants this deal done ahead of June is, let's be real with ourselves here. When the $70 game conversation starts to pop up more and more, you want to have every bit of content you can show off at that summer showcase. I'm not saying everything hedges on that showcase, but it certainly, again, is a strong optical look. And Xbox knows about optics. Why do I say that? Because they were on the receiving end of PlayStation putting a dagger in them with the used game video. That's all it takes, man. And Xbox is inching there. And if they can pretty much reverse the regulators' feelings here, which we've seen signs of such a thing going on, there's been a little bit of uncertainty within the FTC that Lena Khan wants to actually challenge this because it could put into question her leadership in the group, and that wouldn't be good at all, where they don't have much of a leg to stand on here. This might not be the battle they want to take. And if it does go through with now minimal concessions, because PlayStation was trying to play for the side of killing off the deal entirely, things are going to change optically big time, and especially if Microsoft comes out swinging at the next showcase where the expectations are the highest they've ever been. It's the year they need to deliver, and they've got Bethesda games, Activision games, first-party games. It can shape up to be something transformative, and I don't say that to gas them up, to fanboy them, because we're still going to have to see PlayStation's response to this. But this is all an optical move, and in a way, a marketing push by Xbox to really isolate PlayStation here and make them look foolish. And when they're on that island, it kind of puts them in the position where they're probably going to submit their retaliatory statement saying how unfair this is. They're going to look worse. And that is exactly what Xbox wants. They want them to play into their hands. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is a fascinating situation here developing. And of course, this does have the potential to, once April arrives and the EU, for example, can make their decision, because they did ask for a delay on it, they can start to firm things up here. And maybe come June, this deal may be done. We'll see in due time. But I found all of this extremely interesting and and a way industry shaking, because we did see Nintendo and Microsoft team up in the past with crossplay and start to break those barriers down, and they continue to do it together. And that's why I just think that that Xbox cloud gaming, that Xbox Game Pass curated service, whatever it may look like when it heads to other gaming platforms, I definitely believe it's going to be on Switch first. But we'll see in due time. For now, it's just getting the Activision deal done. And I'm curious to see what you think about this in the comments down below. So please do fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.